On January 16, 2001, the Democratic Republic of the Congo tumbled into uncertainty. The country's president, Laurent Desire Kabila, had been sitting in his office at his marble palace in Kinshasa, the capital, when one of his bodyguards entered, drew his pistol, aimed it at Kabila, and fired several times. The news broadcast then reviewed his successor as being his 29-year-old son, Joseph Kabila, who had yet to make a name for himself. The young Kabila was a shy man of a few words and was a mystery unknown to foreign diplomats and the Congolese public alike. Yet, having marched across the country as part of his father's AFDL forces as they toppled Mobutu's government, he enjoyed legitimacy among the military and his father's close confidants, hence why they chose him to be his father's successor. Young Joseph Kabila inherited a country that was going through an intractable war, a near void of civil institutions, and a legacy of human rights abuses committed under the rules of his father Laurent Kabila as well as the dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. The young leader Joseph Kabila had his work cut out for him. This is the story of Joseph Kabila's rise to power as well as his 18-year reign of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Joseph Kabila Kabange's origins, including his parentage and place and date of birth, are the subject of persistent controversy, and without an irrefutable birth certificate, the rumors and many conspiracies about Joseph Kabila's origins have never ceased. Joseph Kabila and his twin sister Janet were born around the 4th of June 1971 to Laurent Desire Kabila and their mother Sifa Maanya in Ankoro, a small town on the banks of the Congo River in North Katanga. There are some reports that instead he was born on 4 December 1971 at Hewa Bora, which was Laurent Kabila's guerrilla headquarters in the Fizi territory of South Kivu in the DRC. His mother Sifa Maanya was one of Laurent Kabila's 3 wives. She was a member of the Bangu tribe in the Maniema province of eastern Congo, although some people have claimed that she was a Tutsi from Rwanda. For years, many of Joseph Kabila's detractors argued that he was in fact a foreigner. This accusation even dogged Joseph Kabila many years later. Most notably, leader of the opposition Etienne Tshisekedi even accused Joseph of not being Laurent Kabila's legitimate son. The late Etienne Tshisekedi argued that Joseph was in fact of Rwandan origin, an accusation that carried some significance in a country that was still reeling from an invasion of Rwandan forces in what came to be known the Congo Wars. Laurent Kabila moved his family to Tanzania in the 1970s after years of leading an unsuccessful rebel movement in Fizi, South Kivu against Zairean dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. At this point, Laurent Kabila was a wanted man, and so the Kabila family lived discreetly in exile in Uganda and Tanzania. In order to avoid the attention of Mobutu's intelligence service, they pretended to be members of the Fipa people, a small ethnic group from southwest Tanzania. The Kabilas did not grow up rich. During a trip to the Soviet Union in the late 1980s, Laurent Kabila was stranded in Moscow, unable to afford the airfare home. His wife Sifa, Joseph's mother, sold vegetables in Tanzania. People who knew Joseph Kabila from that time described him as an intelligent, sporty young man who was passionate about cars and had a great admiration for revolutionary heroes like Thomas Sankara, Che Guevara, and Yoweri Museveni. Joseph Kabila received his primary and secondary education in Tanzania, attending schools based on the British school system where he learned to speak English at a young age. He was also fluent in Swahili, although not in Lingala, which is the language spoken in Congo's capital, Kinshasa. After completing primary and secondary school, young Joseph Kabila trained in the Rwandan military for 3 years before he went on to continue his education. Joseph Kabila had just begun university in Uganda in 1996 when his father called him to help in the rebel war against then-President Mobutu Sese Seko. In this period between 1996 and 1997, which came to be known as the First Congo War, Laurent Desire Kabila headed the Alliance of Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Congo, the AFDL, which was the rebel group that wanted to put an end to Mobutu Sese Seko's dictatorship in Zaire. Mobutu had been in power since 1965. During this war, Joseph Kabila worked alongside a prominent Rwandan figure, James Kabarebe, who at the time was chief military strategist in Laurent Kabila's rebel AFDL. James Kabarebe wanted young Joseph, who was then 25 years, to take part in military operations led by the AFDL forces on Congolese soil with the support of the Rwandan army. Kabarebe said of his protege that Joseph Kabila had the hardest time learning how to fight. Behind Laurent Kabila's AFDL stood the firepower, troops and diplomatic council of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, Uganda's National Resistance Movement, and Angola's MPLA, but also that of the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, as well as the Burundian and Tanzanian governments. The members of this coalition of liberation movements each had their own motives for wanting to topple Mobutu. This coalition sealed the fate of Mobutu, and Laurent Desire Kabila announced in May of 1997 from Lubumbashi that he was assuming the presidency of the republic. Following the AFDL's victory and Laurent Desire Kabila's rise to the presidency, young Joseph Kabila went on to get further training at the PLA National Defense University in Beijing, China. Meanwhile, the help that Laurent Kabila had received from the various nations came with strings attached, namely from two of his so-called friends, Rwandan President Paul Kagame and Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni. However, the Congolese people felt profound resentment over the Rwandan and Ugandan presence and influence in their country. This resentment by the Congolese prompted Laurent Kabila to reconsider his relations with his former friends. In July of 1998, amid deteriorating relations with Rwanda, President Kabila dismissed the Rwandan General James Kabarebe from his position as Army Chief of Staff and ordered Rwandan soldiers to leave the DRC. In turn, Kabila's refusal to satisfy the expectations of his former Rwandan and Ugandan friends prompted the Second Congo War. In the following months, the DRC was divided into two zones, one led by Laurent Kabila with support of the armed forces of Zimbabwe, Angola, Namibia, Chad and Sudan, and the other controlled by the armed wing of what was known as the RCD, the Rwandan Army, the Ugandan Army, and the Burundian Army. In addition to these forces, a group called the MLC led by Jean-Pierre Bemba and the RCD KML occupied other parts of the country. The Second Congo War precipitated Joseph Kabila's return to the Congo in August of 1998, when he was appointed General Major and Chief of Staff of the Congolese Army at the age of 27. His rapid promotion was surprising to many, considering the very short time he had spent in the military. In the year 2000, Joseph Kabila became Chief of Staff of the Land Forces and was one of the main military commanders during the Second Congo War. Joseph Kabila's life changed dramatically in the beginning of 2001. On January 16 of that year, his father Laurent Kabila had been sitting in his office at his marble palace in Kinshasa when one of his bodyguards shot him several times. Following this incident, Laurent Kabila's advisors scrambled to react. Keeping news of the attack from the public, they arranged for his dead body to be flown to Zimbabwe under the guise of him getting treatment. Congo's borders were sealed, its airports shut down, and a curfew announced. When it became apparent that Laurent Kabila's gunshot wounds were fatal, his close allies, in consultation with several other members of the presidential cabinet, met in order to decide on a successor. They settled on his son Joseph as the only person who could hold together various government and military factions. At that point, there had been a lot of bad blood between senior government officials, and so appointing Joseph Kabila was the path of least resistance. In other words, this was an appointment that everyone could get behind. Joseph Kabila Kabange was just 29 years old and hardly had any experience. His only civilian work experience lay in doing odd jobs for his father and driving a taxi. For this group of Laurent Kabila's advisors and associates, selling their choice to other power brokers was not easy. Other military commanders also had to be convinced. But this wasn't as difficult since Joseph was well known and generally respected within the military. An unexpected obstacle was Joseph Kabila's initial reluctance to accept the offer. When his father's advisors asked him to become president, it is said that he was initially very resistant to the idea, most likely because he feared for his life. He eventually relented and accepted the proposal. And so on January 27, 2001, 11 days after his father's death, Joseph Kabila became the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and at the time the youngest head of state in the world. The Congolese did not know what to expect from their new president. They did not know if he was strong enough to hold the country together or whether he could pursue war or peace. Also at the time, many people were unhappy with the way Joseph Kabila had come to power. They objected to the fact that he was chosen secretly and automatically. Others disapproved of the choice because they were unhappy with his father's record as a leader. They also believed that Joseph was easily influenced and a puppet to his father's advisors. Whatever the case, when Joseph Kabila became president, the country faced many challenges. As I already alluded to, almost half of the national territory was occupied by the armies of neighboring countries which had their own plans for the Congo. Despite this complicated state of affairs, Joseph Kabila was no pushover. He displayed a strong will and he understood that remaining in power could not be left to chance. Immediately upon inheriting the presidency, he made surprising decisions that diverged completely from his father's. Among other things, he dismissed his father's former advisors and allies. Joseph Kabila also began the normalization of bilateral relations with key allies such as the United States, France, Britain and Belgium, among others. His trip to France, the US and Belgium, hardly a week after his rise to power, increased his legitimacy both at home and abroad. The words that he uttered were well received, and so he was given the benefit of the doubt. In his speeches, Joseph Kabila referred to the need to restore peace and consolidate national communion, the relaunching of the Lusaka Peace Accord, the return to democratic life, and the opening up of the political system. Joseph Kabila also spoke about the need to organize an inter-Congolese dialogue as well as the liberalization of the economy. Kabila also held talks with rebel groups and the governments of 5 countries, namely Rwanda, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Angola and Namibia, that had troops in Congo. Political talks also took place between Congolese actors in Lusaka, Zambia, as well as in Pretoria and Sun City in South Africa. In a meeting in Zambia in February of 2001, Joseph Kabila agreed to begin the implementation of a ceasefire agreement that had been signed in July of 1999 but had not been honored. In December of 2002, Joseph Kabila was a signatory to an agreement with rebels to end the war and to form a power-sharing transitional government. This agreement, known as the Global and Inclusive Agreement, was signed on December 16, 2002. Based on the deal, the parties agreed to combine their efforts in order to achieve national reconciliation. To this effect, they decided to set up a government of national unity, which would eventually organize free and democratic elections after a period of transition, the duration of which was fixed. The power-sharing agreement kept Joseph Kabila as interim president with 4 vice presidents, one representing the government, one the rebel group RCD Goma, another the MLC of Jean-Pierre Bemba, and another for the civil society. This agreement was ratified in April of 2003. United Nations peacekeepers arrived in DR Congo at the end of March 2003 to monitor the ceasefire and the pullback of troops. Though Joseph Kabila made strides towards peace, his actions were not without opposition. For instance, in 2004, there were alleged coup attempts against him. In one of these attempts, members of an elite unit that guarded him took charge of state radio. Major Eric Lenge of the Presidential Guard, who was said to be the leader of the group, announced on the radio that the country's transitional process was not working and that he was suspending it and taking control himself. Fortunately for Joseph Kabila, his loyalist forces prevailed and crushed the coup d'etat. Undeterred, Joseph Kabila continued in his attempts to unify the country. Back in 2001, when Joseph Kabila took over, the economy was in a disastrous state, with no growth, infrastructure broken, rapid inflation, and a tanking currency. Soon after assuming office, Joseph Kabila called in the World Bank, the IMF and Western donors to the Congo. The initial results of his reforms, at least, were impressive. Inflation and the value of the Congolese franc stabilized, and new investment flowed into the mining, telecommunications, construction, and infrastructure sectors. Although the DRC's development indicators remained below the African average, there was significant progress with increases in life expectancy and school enrollment and a dramatic fall in childhood mortality. Economic indicators also improved under Joseph Kabila's rule, although they remained far below the country's potential. However, the key challenge was to diversify the Congolese economy, since most of the growth was still too reliant on mining. Unfortunately, corruption was also rife in the DRC, and Joseph Kabila and his family were accused of being the top perpetrators of corruption in the country, as well as abusing power to enrich themselves. It is alleged that the most egregious form of corruption involved Joseph Kabila and his family. For instance, an organization known as the Congo Research Group published a report in collaboration with Bloomberg News that exposed the elaborate web of businesses that the president and his relatives constructed in Congo. The report showed that the Kabilas had their fingers in everything from farming and mining to aviation and construction. This report also alleged that many Kabila-linked businesses received special treatment. For example, there were mines that were protected by presidential guards. There was even a company with links to the Kabila family that was said to have gotten $60 of the $185 fee for each new Congolese passport. The Panama Papers that were published beginning of April 3, 2016 revealed that Kabila's twin sister, Janet, using a different name, owned an indirect share in the nation's largest mobile phone operator, and this was through a company registered in the South Pacific Islands. Another investigation titled The Congo Hold-Up, which was conducted by international media and NGOs, accused Joseph Kabila and his family of having siphoned at least $138 million from state coffers. These alleged embezzlements took place from 2013 to 2018, according to the authors of this investigation. The main actor was alleged to be Kabila's brother, Francis Silemani. It is said that Silemani purchased numerous luxury homes in the United States and South Africa, in part using funds diverted from the Congolese government. However, none of the documents to emerge from most of these scandals have Joseph Kabila's signatures on them, though the names of his top aides and companies of his associates are all over them. As part of the peace process that ended the war in 2003, the DR Congo created a new political system. The various rebel leaders rebranded their militias as political parties and exchanged their military fatigues for suits. A new constitution was drafted. Powerful international and national backers, including United States diplomats in Kinshasa, enabled Joseph Kabila to thwart Jean-Pierre Bemba, who was president of the MLC, in his quest to become the president in the 2006 elections. Veteran politician Etienne Tshisekedi's party boycotted the elections and remained outside the institutions and continued to play a role as an opposition party. This 2006 presidential election was generally regarded as free and fair. Jean-Pierre Bemba was subsequently arrested in Belgium and brought before the International Criminal Court. Maybe one day I'll do a video on Jean-Pierre Bemba. Joseph Kabila stood for re-election in 2011, facing 10 other candidates in the poll that was scheduled for November 28 of that year. His strongest challenger was Etienne Tshisekedi. Kabila's re-election bid was bolstered by his well-organized political campaign, as well as a January 2011 constitutional amendment that eliminated the second round of voting in the presidential race, therefore allowing a candidate to win without necessarily having a majority of the vote. However, many Congolese were disgruntled over Kabila's failure to keep all of his 2006 election campaign promises, and so Etienne Tshisekedi was a popular opposition figure with considerable support. The political climate leading up to the election was tense and punctuated with violence because of tensions between the parties, as well as legitimate concerns that the logistical challenges would interfere with voting in remote parts of the country. Nonetheless, the elections were held as scheduled and provisional results showed that Kabila was a winner with 49% of the vote. Tshisekedi followed with 32%. However, several international monitoring groups characterized the polls as being poorly organized and noted many irregularities. International observers even reported that some districts had impossibly high turnout rates of more than 99% and that hundreds of thousands of ballots had disappeared.
We wanted to organize perfect elections. Did we attain that perfection? Not 100%. Were there mistakes, errors? Definitely. Like in any other election, be it on the continent or otherwise.
For his part, the Archbishop of Kinshasa declared that the results of the Electoral Commission conformed neither to truth nor justice. Indeed, Joseph Kabila's proclamation as winner of the presidential elections raised the questions of his legitimacy and plunged the Congo into a grave constitutional crisis. But the results were confirmed by the Supreme Court and Joseph Kabila was inaugurated on 20 December 2011. In the years that followed, Joseph Kabila was a target of protests when there were suspicions as early as 2013 that he would not step down at the end of his term in late 2016 and would instead try to find a way to extend his time in office. This suspicion was confirmed when 3 years before the scheduled vote, he pushed for an amendment to the constitution that would do away with the 2-term limit, but this bid by Joseph Kabila failed and it triggered defections from Kabila's ruling coalition. His allies then proposed a time-consuming national census that would push back the date of the vote. But that failed as well, and Kabila turned to more creative means. In 2015, for example, the government announced that the Congo's 11 provinces would be split into 26, which had the effect of weakening rival politicians and diverting resources from elections. Suspicions against Kabila were bolstered even further after the Constitutional Court ruled in May 2016 that in the event that the elections were delayed, Joseph Kabila would remain in office until a successor could be elected and installed. Months later, the court granted a request from the Electoral Commission to postpone the 2016 elections. One of the reasons cited for delaying these elections was the logistical obstacles associated with holding the elections. A presidential election was eventually scheduled for December 23, 2018, and after years of speculation about Joseph Kabila's intentions, it was confirmed that he would not be standing in the election and would instead support the candidacy of Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary. Although the elections were held in most parts of the country and in generally peaceful conditions, there were problems reported regarding the voting process and tabulation of the votes. When the results were announced a week and a half later, Felix Tshisekedi, the son of Etienne Tshisekedi, who had died in 2017, was declared the winner, followed closely by Martin Fayulu, another opposition candidate. Shadary came in third. Thereafter, Martin Fayulu and others accused Felix Tshisekedi and Joseph Kabila of having made a deal to secure the former's election victory in exchange for protecting the interests of the latter and his associates. However, representatives of both Tshisekedi and Kabila denied the accusations. Martin Fayulu challenged the results at the Constitutional Court, but the court upheld Tshisekedi's victory. Joseph Kabila Kabange stepped down on January 24, 2019, handing power to Felix Tshisekedi, the first peaceful transition of power in Congo since the country became independent in 1960. This marked the end of Joseph Kabila's 18-year rule of the DRC. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been Tatenda for African Biographics, wishing you a happy 2023. Until next time, cheers. Have a good one.